This here, my friends, is the 50mm f1.4 GM lens. This is the newest lens by Sony. And you're probably thinking, wait, f1.4? Don't we already have an f1.2? Yeah, we got an f1.2. There are a few key differences between these lenses and why you might actually choose the f1.4 or why you might choose the f1.2. And ultimately, that's what we're going to be unpacking in this video. First of all, let's go through some of the specs and some of the features of this lens, and then we can go through why you might actually choose this one over the f1.2. So the 50mm f1.4 is the newest lens in the GMaster series. And as usual, has brilliant build quality, especially when it comes to being a GMaster lens. It is dust and moisture resistant. It has that fluorine front element coating which helps repel water. It has the newest XD linear focusing motor which gives you fast and smooth autofocus performance. It has 11 blade diaphragm for creamy smooth bokeh. It has a standard focus ring and an aperture ring. It has an aperture lock, an aperture click switch, a focus mode switch, and 2 custom buttons. It has a 60mm front filter thread, a minimum focusing distance of 41 centimeters, and weighs in at a total of 516 grams. So essentially, if you are a gimbal shooter and you love the 24mm and you love the 35mm, you can add the 50mm f1.4 to your camera. And the great thing is you're going to be consistent through that f-stop range, because if you switch out a lens that's an f1.2 or an f1.8, you're going to have to change that exposure. And to try and keep the exposure exactly the same, having the same f-stop or t-stop is really going to help. And that is one of the biggest reasons why Sony did this, is that it's going to be consistent through that f1.4 range. If you don't need an f1.2 and you can get away with the f1.4, this is probably going to be a really good option, especially if you do already have the 24 and the 35 GM exactly like I do. This is going to slot in there absolutely perfect. The biggest pro of choosing the f1.4 over the f1.2 is not just this size, but it's also the front filter thread as well. As I mentioned before, it's a 67mm front filter thread, and that matches up with the 24 and 35mm GM, whereas the 85mm GM is about a 77 front filter thread. And then you have the 50 f1.2, which is a 72 front filter thread. And being an alpha shooter, we don't have NDs inside the alpha bodies. So this is where ND filters will come in handy. And the great thing is you won't have to use any step-up rings to obviously change your lenses, and literally just screw this one directly onto the newer lens. And realistically, that just comes down to convenience. Like, step-up rings are super cheap and you can buy them, absolutely no worries, but you don't have to worry about continuously changing them when you're changing lenses. You can literally just take this lens off the camera body, put a new lens on, and then put your filter directly onto the front. For some, that may be a bit of a big deal. For some others, that probably isn't a big deal. You've probably got a little bit more time when you're actually filming. And especially if you do have a thicker and more heavier lens, you're going to have to rebalance the gimbal every single time you change the lenses. And that can be really inconvenient. And sometimes it comes to the point where you're just like, look, I'm just going to stick with the one lens. And you're probably not going to get the maximum benefit out of, creating that shot that you wanted. You want to stay on a wide lens, and then when you need a tight shot, mid shot, you probably would go in for a 50mm or a 35mm. These are the options you want to have when it comes to filmmaking, and you don't want to be limited because you don't want to have to rebalance, and you don't want to have to, get step-up rings and all those kind of things. It just makes it so much easier across the board when it's a 24, 35, and a 50. And obviously when it comes to GMaster glass, you're going to get that optimal image quality, and especially with all the brand new GMaster glass, they're pretty much perfect from center to edge. And let's have a look at the image quality test. So here is the 50mm f1.4 into the chart. We go directly into the center and you can see how sharp this lens is, wide open at f1.4. We go out to the corners and same again, absolutely tack sharp. Great contrast in the center and in the corners, and obviously the more you stop down, the sharper and the more contrasty it's going to get, which is crazy. This is at the minimum aperture of f16, so we'll go into the center, and same again, super sharp, doesn't actually suffer from the effects of diffraction, which is really interesting. It does really well in the corners and obviously in the center, so extremely impressive image quality performance from the 50mm f1.4. When it comes to the characteristics of this lens, the bokeh performance is incredible. It is absolutely buttery smooth. You shouldn't have to worry about any GMaster lenses when it comes to bokeh quality. Now when it comes to the bokeh ball shape wide open at f1.4, it is a little bit cat eye-ish in the corners while it's nice and spherical in the center. If you do stop it down to around maybe 2.2 to 2.8, this is where the bokeh balls get a little bit more rounder out in the edges. But overall, it really does come down to just personal preference anyway. Also, when you are wide open at f1.4, there is a little bit of chromatic aberration on high contrasting edges. You can obviously adjust this when it comes to photography. When it comes to video, that's when it becomes a little bit difficult. But if you do stop it down to f1.8, it generally starts to go away. Now, one of the greatest things that I love about the new Sony lenses is the XD linear focusing motor. And this allows most of the GMaster lenses, if not all of them, to be almost exactly linear. So if you want to do repeatable focus pulls, you have that ability to do so. And essentially, if you rack focus really fast or really slow, you are going to get those exact spots each and every time. This could actually open up the ability to use handheld focusing wheels with the GMaster lenses if you really wanted to, but this just gives you more versatility when it comes to manual focusing as opposed to just always autofocus. One of the greatest things about the newer alpha bodies as well is focus breathing compensation. Now we all know that the 35mm does have some pretty heavy focus breathing, whereas this 50mm, they've actually fixed that quite a lot when it comes to focus breathing. Now the easiest way to tell here is look at Lego Batman in the right corner of both images, and then when we rack to the background, look at the vertical shelving, and you can notice that the breathing compensation doesn't actually crop in that much. It actually is a massive improvement over the Zeiss f1.4. That one tends to focus breathe quite a lot. Now this one does have a little bit of focus breathing. Sure, it's not 100% perfect, but if you are a person that doesn't really worry about the focus breathing and aren't really fazed by it, then obviously leave the focus breathing compensation turned off and you won't have any issues with it. So now we have to talk about the one thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and that's money. The price of this obviously is premium because the GMaster range is a premium range and you obviously have to pay the price for it. Now prices do vary when it comes to country versus country. Now the price here in Australia, I think this lens is dropping about 200 Australian dollars less than the 51-2. When it comes to US prices, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's very similar, maybe 100 US or 200 US cheaper than the 51-2. When it comes to Europe, lens prices seem to be extremely expensive and much higher than US and Australian prices, but this is obviously slightly cheaper than the 51-2, but it's only a couple of $100 cheaper, potentially wherever you are. Is it worth investing a little bit more in the 51-2 or get slightly, smaller size and all these different features for an f1.4? That's what you need to really break down at the end of the day. Overall, I think Sony are doing a fabulous job when it comes to producing new lenses. They're pretty much thinking about as many people as they can. Majority of professionals would probably go for the f1.2, mainly for the fact that they have a little bit more versatility and the control of that depth of field, but at the cost of the size. A lot of people will generally just go for the f1.4, mainly because it's the same size as the 24 and 35, and a nice wide open f1.4 will give you a really nice pleasing image. So it really comes down to that personal preference, and if you do want to save a couple of bucks, you go for the f1.4 over the f1.2. If you do want the smaller size, the smaller front filter thread, the f1.4 is going to be your option. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, that'd be absolutely amazing. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and the link will be in the description below, obviously, if you do want to pick one of these up. But yeah, other than that guys, I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, thanks for watching. Let's get it.